On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, the skies above Netheravon Airfield in Wiltshire, England, bore witness to a harrowing event that would forever change a life and expose a sinister plot. Victoria Cilliers, a seasoned physiotherapist and former British Army captain with over 2,600 jumps to her name, embarked on what was supposed to be a joyous solo skydive from 4,000 feet. This jump was more than a thrill-seeking adventure. It was a gift from her husband Emile, an attempt to rekindle hope amid the strains enveloping their marriage. Yet, that day, the parachute which was meant to offer freedom and safety became an instrument of betrayal and near death. As Victoria leapt from the aircraft, she followed the precise procedures honed over thousands of jumps, preparing to deploy her main parachute. But the unfolding tragedy began here. Instead of the main chute unfurling smoothly, the lines were grotesquely tangled, causing a catastrophic failure. Experts would later confirm that the sabotaged lines guaranteed not just malfunction, but an uncontrollable spin, throwing Victoria into a violent spiral. Despite the chaos, Victoria's training and composure kicked in. She cut away the main chute, ready to deploy the reserve parachute, her final lifeline. Yet fate dealt a second cruel blow. The reserve parachute, designed to be an absolute failsafe, also failed. One side of the canopy inflated, but the other remained useless. This unbalanced deployment plunged Victoria into an unprecedented and terrifying fall. Experts later testified that such a dual malfunction, with both main and reserve parachutes failing, was unheard of in skydiving history. Victoria plummeted towards the earth at an estimated speed of around 60 miles per hour. From below, eyewitnesses watched in stunned horror, convinced that death was inevitable. So dire was the situation that a body bag was brought to the landing site before the full story of survival would emerge. But amidst the dreadful freefall, fortune intervened. Victoria struck a newly ploughed, soft field that cushioned her impact, dramatically lessening the force of her fall. What should have been fatal was instead miraculously survivable. Her injuries were devastating: broken spine and pelvis, multiple fractured ribs. Yet against all odds, she lived. This survival was pivotal. The difference between life and death transformed an apparent skydiving accident into a chilling attempted murder investigation that would expose a meticulously calculated plot by the man meant to protect her husband, Emile. Had Victoria died that day, the case might have ended as a tragic, if rare, skydiving malfunction. The sabotage was designed to mimic the known risks of the sport, making it appear as a freak accident. Emile, a man with detailed parachuting expertise, stood ready to don the mask of a grieving husband, cash in on a £120,000 life insurance payout, and erase suspicion in what should have been an untraceable crime. Without Victoria's survival, the deep, dark motives behind this fall might have remained forever concealed, buried beneath layers of plausible deniability. Instead, Victoria became a living witness to the most terrifying betrayal. The immediate suspicion of the Army Parachute Association's chief instructor, Mark Byoda, who observed the failure of her chutes, was the crucial spark for police involvement. Authorities meticulously examined the parachute rig, uncovering the deliberate sabotage, lines twisted and tangled on the main chute, two critical slinks removed from the reserve, ensuring the partial inflation and uncontrollable spin. The somber scene at Netheravon contrasted starkly with the quiet brutality underlying the fall. This was no accident. It was a calculated act of attempted murder, engineered with cold precision by a husband who had intimate knowledge of parachuting mechanics. Victoria's survival did not come without cost. The injuries she sustained were life-changing and excruciatingly painful. Yet her determination to live and recover was a powerful testament to human resilience. Her recovery journey would demand physical strength and psychological fortitude, as she faced not only the trauma of the fall, but the horrific truth of her husband's betrayal. This Easter Sunday fall marked the start of a painstaking investigation into the sabotage, an inquiry that would unravel a dark tapestry of deceit, financial desperation, and coercive control. It was a crime born from intimate knowledge, technical skill, and deep-seated malice, a rare case where a skydiving joy turned into a deadly gamble for survival. Victoria's story vividly illustrates how hope, symbolized by a simple gift to fly free, became entangled with a husband's cruel intent. Her miraculous journey from the depths of a 4,000-foot freefall into an astonishing tale of survival and justice shines a stark light on the shadows that can lurk behind closed doors. As we delve further, the events of that fateful day clearly mark a critical turning point, from a near-fatal accident to the exposure of chilling attempted murder and a relentless pursuit of truth and accountability. Victoria Cilliers' harrowing jump reminds us how courage and chance can intersect in the most extraordinary ways, turning tragedy into a pathway toward justice. Behind the facade, the complex portrait of the Cilliers marriage at first glance, Emile and Victoria Cilliers appeared to embody the kind of life many aspire to but few achieve. Nestled in a scenic Wiltshire village near the ancient monument of Stonehenge, their home seemed a haven of tranquility and success. Emile, a former army sergeant known for his physical prowess and disciplined demeanor as a Royal Army physical training instructor, carried the image of strength and reliability. Victoria, a respected chartered physiotherapist and former British Army captain, demonstrated a parallel dedication and professionalism. Together, they seemed the embodiment of a modern, successful family raising two young children, united by shared interests in sports and fitness, living a picture-perfect existence. But beneath this carefully maintained facade lay a darker story, one that speaks to the complexity and often hidden nature of intimate partner abuse. Their story began in 2009, not in romance but in a clinical setting. Victoria was treating Emile for a debilitating knee injury sustained during a skiing accident. At that time, Emile was still married to his first wife, Carly, with whom he had two children. Yet, this professional relationship evolved rapidly once Emile divorced Carly, culminating in his marriage to Victoria in 2011 in South Africa. On the surface, it was a new beginning, a fresh chapter. However, a closer look reveals a marriage shadowed by deception, manipulation, and control. Victoria's later reflections, captured poignantly in her memoir and reinforced by court evidence, reveal the profound contrast between the couple's outward appearance and the grim reality behind closed doors. The man who projected the image of an intense and passionate alpha male soldier was anything but straightforward in private. Emile's mask of charm slowly cracked to expose a manipulative and dangerous personality. He was a pathological liar who routinely deceived not only the outside world but also Victoria herself. Financial recklessness characterized his behavior. He amassed debts amounting to tens of thousands of pounds while systematically draining Victoria's financial resources through loans and unauthorized transfers. Excuses flowed easily from him, claims of wage mix-ups, work errors, but these explanations thinly veiled a pattern of self-interest and irresponsibility. More insidiously, Emile exercised a tight grip on control through emotional coercion. Psychological abuse, often invisible to outsiders, functioned as a weapon in his arsenal. Victoria became ensnared in a web of gaslighting, a form of manipulation where the victim's sense of reality is undermined, leaving her confused and doubting her own perceptions. This slow erosion of self-worth created a profound state of entrapment. Victoria described feeling trapped, isolated in a relationship where love and manipulation were unnervingly intertwined. The cognitive dissonance she experienced, the disjunction between Emile the devoted, respected soldier and Emile the deceitful abuser, exemplifies the pernicious effects of trauma bonding. It explains her initial disbelief and defense of him, even in the face of mounting evidence of his malevolence. This cultivated image of perfection was no incidental byproduct but a deliberate tool of Emile's abuse. His respectable military career and disciplined public persona served to command trust and disarm suspicion. To Victoria, this was a devastating betrayal. The man revered by colleagues and friends was the same man who fractured her sense of safety and reality at home. The contrast between the public and private facades portrays the insidious nature of such abuse. The abuser's careful maintenance of appearances is not merely for external deception, but serves to confound the victim's understanding of their own experience, delaying recognition and escape. The Cilliers marriage was a case study in how appearances can deceive, how toxic dynamics flourish hidden behind smiles and social respectability. Despite outward signs of success and normality, the relationship was marred by a pattern of coercive control, a progressively damaging cycle of domination that left Victoria isolated and psychologically subdued. The veneer of a model soldier and perfect family masked a sinister reality of manipulation, infidelity, and financial exploitation that slowly poisoned their life together. In examining this tortured marriage, it is essential to understand the human cost of coercive control, the way it warps a victim's perceptions, fragments their self-trust, and delays exposure of the truth. This psychological tumult was a critical factor that kept Victoria from identifying the true extent of Emile's depravity until it culminated in attempted murder. Her story stands as a powerful testament to the complexity of abuse beyond physical violence, highlighting how emotional and psychological domination can be as destructive and deadly as any overt attack. As we peel back the layers of this tragic story, the shocking fact remains that what many saw as a perfect life was, in truth, a carefully constructed facade, behind which a web of lies, control, and violence took root. Victoria's experience reminds us that domestic abuse often wears a disguise, and it is only through careful listening and examination that the dark realities beneath can be acknowledged and confronted. This portrait of the Cilliers marriage prepares us to understand the motives and mechanisms behind the devastating events that followed, events that would shift this story from one of silent torment to a chilling criminal investigation and a fight for survival. It is a reminder that behind the facades we see often lie untold stories of struggle and resilience, setting the stage for the harrowing journey to come. In unraveling the complex and chilling plot behind the attempted murder of Victoria Cilliers, the prosecution revealed a disturbing trifecta of motives, each strand intertwining to form a web of desperation, desire, and control that drove Emile Cilliers to conspire against his wife's life. At the heart of his twisted rationale was a crushing financial burden. Emile was living far beyond his means, burdened with debts exceeding £22,000 owed to a range of lenders and even colleagues within his circle. This mounting financial strain was not a secret. It loomed over him like an inescapable shadow, pressing relentlessly. To sustain his unsustainable lifestyle, Emile had siphoned money directly from Victoria's personal bank accounts, a grim betrayal compounded by the sheer scale of his recklessness. He borrowed nearly £19,000 from her, then went so far as to covertly transfer an additional £6,000 without her knowledge, an act that was carefully traced back to their shared family computer. His financial desperation was no mere mismanagement, it was a catalyst for the deadly intentions that followed. Emile saw the sizable life insurance policy on Victoria, worth approximately £120,000, as a lifeline, a way to erase his debts and secure a fresh start. But the plan to reach that financial salvation was nothing short of horrifying. The second, equally potent motive was Emile's pathological infidelity, a web of betrayal far-reaching and deeply entwined with the murder plot. Despite being married to Victoria, Emile maintained multiple ongoing affairs. A significant illicit relationship with Stephanie Goller commenced during an army ski trip in November 2014, continuing trysts with his ex-wife, Carly, and frequent liaisons with prostitutes and attendees at swingers clubs. His sexual escapades were relentless, unchecked, and driven by an urgent desire to escape the confines of his marriage in pursuit of a so-called new life. The affair with Goller, in particular, was a driving force. Their thousands of text messages uncovered by investigators laid bare his duplicity and desperation. Perhaps most chillingly, a message sent in January 2015 to Stephanie set a precise timeline. From April onwards I can do random and spontaneous. This was no casual promise. It was a cold, calculated timetable for his murderous intentions, a deadline by which he intended to free himself from Victoria's hold, sealing her fate to secure his new beginning. The link between this timeline and the actual attempts on Victoria's life in late March and early April was undeniable, underscoring the premeditation and cold calculation behind his actions. The third motive, often more subtle yet deeply ingrained in Emile's psyche, was a toxic mixture of narcissistic ego and career preservation. Victoria outranked Emile in the army, holding the rank of captain, while he was a sergeant. This professional dynamic was a source of growing tension and insecurity for Emile. He feared that a bitter separation might result in Victoria using her higher status to damage his military career and reputation, a prospect intolerable to a man whose identity was so firmly rooted in his role as an alpha male soldier. For Emile, murder was not just a means to an end, but the ultimate form of control. To silence Victoria permanently was to erase any threat she posed to his standing, to preserve the carefully constructed facade of his career, and to prevent any scandal or damage that might arise from their unraveling marriage. It was a chilling assertion of dominance. If he could not have Victoria, no one would. These three motives, crippling debt, unbridled infidelity, and narcissistic obsession with status, did not exist in isolation but formed a tightly woven tapestry of motive and means. The prosecution painstakingly detailed how each factor fed into the other. Financial recklessness funded emotional escape, which in turn heightened fears around reputation and control. Emile's intricate web of lies and betrayals was not just about personal failure or marital discord. It was a meticulously engineered plan to eliminate Victoria and seize a new life on his terms. What emerged was a portrait of a man consumed by selfish desires, willing to cross every moral and legal line to fulfill them. His calculated premeditation was evident not only in his communications with Stephanie but in his actions, each step closer to murder mapped out with precision and chilling intent. From financial exploitation to emotional manipulation, and ultimately to attempted murder, Emile's conduct exposes a deeply disturbed individual driven by desperation and ego. This disturbing convergence of motives sets the stage for understanding the gravity and coldness of the attempts on Victoria's life, acts not born of passion or momentary rage, but of deliberate, sustained plotting fueled by a toxic cocktail of debt, desire, and ego. It is a stark reminder of how complex and insidious the motivations behind intimate partner violence and attempted murder can be, underscoring the importance of meticulous investigation and justice in exposing and confronting such evil. With motives laid bare, the case was ready to reveal the terrifying and calculated methods Emile employed to turn his deadly plan into a near-fatal reality for Victoria, a story that reaches its harrowing climax in the events of that Easter weekend, where love was shattered and survival became a battle against death itself. In the quiet hours of March 29, 2015, within the walls of a home that should have been a sanctuary, a sinister plan quietly unfolded. Victoria Cilliers and her two young children were asleep upstairs, oblivious to the grave danger lurking just below. Emile Cilliers, her husband, claimed he needed to stay at his barracks that night, a fabricated alibi designed to mask his true intentions. Under the cover of darkness, Emile slipped into the kitchen, where he began to engineer his first attempt on Victoria's life. Armed with locking pliers, a tool that would become a key piece of evidence, Emile meticulously set about loosening the nut on the gas isolation valve next to the oven. This was no careless act or spontaneous misjudgment. It was a calculated move. He loosened the valve just enough to cause a slow, almost imperceptible gas leak, one cunningly calibrated so that, if discovered, it could easily be dismissed as an accident rather than an act of murder. The subtlety of the leak concealed the magnitude of the threat. It permeated the home silently, endangering the lives of Victoria and their children without a sound or a dramatic spark. When morning arrived, Victoria was the first to detect something was terribly wrong. The unmistakable odor of gas had filled the air, a warning sign that set her senses on high alert. Naturally concerned, she reached out to Emile, who was supposedly away at the barracks. Instead of advice grounded in safety, Emile's response was chillingly cold and calculated. He told Victoria to test the hob, essentially inviting her to ignite the gas, a reckless and dangerous suggestion that could have turned their home into a death trap in an instant. It was Victoria's prudence and cautious nature that prevailed. She wisely ignored his advice, taking care instead to ventilate the house and call a gas engineer to investigate. This decision, seemingly small and instinctive, averted disaster. Had Victoria followed Emile's instruction, the accumulated gas might have exploded, with potentially fatal consequences for her and their children. This was no mere misstep in judgment. It was a deliberate act of attempted murder, a dark undercurrent running beneath the veneer of domestic normalcy. The layers of deception deepened as forensic investigators began to peel back the truth. The police found forensic evidence that would later prove crucial in unraveling Emile's plot. On the gas pipe itself, forensic analysis detected Emile's DNA, a direct, physical link that tied him unmistakably to the site of the leak. Alongside the genetic evidence, an expert examined the tool marks on the loosened nut and found them to be a conclusive match to Emile's locking pliers recovered from his home. The marks revealed not just contact but force applied in a manner consistent with loosening, exactly what Emile had denied in court. He claimed he arrived home to find the leak and had tried to tighten the valve to fix it, but the forensic findings dismantled this narrative entirely. The tool marks unequivocally indicated a loosening action, executed with deliberate force, ruling out his story as a fabricated excuse. Behind these facts lies a harrowing portrait of cold calculation and callous intent. Emile's decision to execute his first murderous plan inside the family home, fully aware his children slept mere rooms away, underscores a frightening disregard for human life. This wasn't a moment of madness or a reckless prank. It was a premeditated act designed to kill, staged in the heart of the place where trust should have been strongest. The gas leak attempt, though it failed to claim a life, formed the cornerstone of the case against Emile. It exposed his clear intent to harm Victoria and set the stage for the deadly acts that would follow. This attempt was not merely a precursor. It was a deliberate trial, a test of his willingness and cold-bloodedness to murder under the guise of accident. Emile's conduct on that day revealed much about the man beneath the uniform, stripping away the facade of the disciplined soldier and devoted husband. It painted a picture of a man who would weaponize even the most ordinary household elements, the gas pipe and kitchen appliances, against those he claimed to love. The poison in that quiet act was not just in the gas that could have exploded. It was in the betrayal, the manipulation, and the terrifying closeness of the threat. This first attempt at home demonstrated the chilling extent of Emile's control and deception. It showed a man prepared to gamble with innocent lives, orchestrating danger with meticulous care, hoping it would be mistaken for a tragic accident. Yet, the warning signs were there, overlooked by many but not by the investigators who would later piece together the forensic puzzle. As the investigation unfolded, the gas leak would serve as an irrefutable testament to Emile's guilt. It was the clearest evidence of a pattern of calculated intent and premeditation, a dark prelude to the more audacious and deadly plan that awaited Victoria in the skies. Victoria's survival that morning was a narrow escape, a fragile moment of grace amidst the shadow of a husband's betrayal. It was the first glimpse into the silent war waged behind closed doors, a war not just fought with words and psychological control, but with a deadly willingness to kill. The gas leak attempt would later become a pivotal chapter in the story of survival and justice, marking the beginning of the unraveling of Emile's sinister plans. From this dark episode inside the family home, the story would move upward toward the chilling climax at Netheravon Airfield. But the memory of that gas leak, its threat, its near catastrophe, the forensic trail it left behind, remains a haunting reminder of the cold, deliberate evil hiding in places we least expect. It stands as a testament to Victoria's courage, her intuition, and ultimately, the meticulous police work that brought a killer to justice before he could finish the deadly work he had begun. This first attempt was not just an isolated act. It was the gateway into the heart of a calculated, merciless conspiracy that would soon escalate to unimaginable heights. And despite this initial failure, Emile would not be deterred. His plans were far from over. The gas leak plot ended with hope preserved by Victoria's keen sense and grace under pressure, but it was only the calm before the storm. On a quiet spring day at Netheravon Airfield, the calm surface of a family outing masked a deadly calculus that would haunt the lives of those involved forever. It was April 4, 2015, just one day before a catastrophic event would irrevocably change everything for Victoria Cilliers. But before the terrifying freefall, before the broken bones and shattered trust, there was a moment cloaked in ordinary routine and disguised as care. After Emile Cilliers' first attempt to end his wife's life through a slow gas leak was discovered but not yet repaired, he swiftly shifted his focus to a far more calculated and chilling plan, one born of his technical expertise and cold-blooded intent. With Victoria and their children in tow, Emile headed to Netheravon Airfield, a place Victoria knew well as an experienced skydiver. On this day, Victoria was to hire a parachute rig, a necessary step since her own equipment was away for servicing. What unfolded next would seal Emile's deadly plot with a quiet but devastating precision. Under the guise of tending to their young daughter's needs, Emile took possession of the parachute pack and led it into the men's restroom, an inconspicuous action later identified by witnesses and experts as highly suspicious. Here, behind the privacy of a cubicle door, he transformed what should have been a moment of care into the setting for a lethal betrayal. Utilizing his credentials as a certified parachute packer and his intimate knowledge of the rigging, Emile methodically sabotaged both the main and reserve parachutes. The reserve chute, designed as a life-saving fallback, was carefully dismantled. Two critical slinks, the small yet essential fabric links that connect the harness to the suspension lines, were removed. This act ensured that, should the reserve deploy, it would fail to open properly, throwing the jumper into a deadly spin. But Emile did not stop there. His hands deftly tangled the lines of the main parachute, intertwining them so as to guarantee a severe malfunction on deployment. The result was a scenario nightmare for any skydiver, an uncontrollable descent spinning wildly towards the earth. This was not the work of chance or desperation, but premeditation born of technical mastery. Emile's knowledge of parachute assembly and function was absolute. He understood exactly how to inflict damage that would pass unnoticed in routine inspections, yet be fatal in execution. What's more, a video demonstration presented at trial would later reveal how quickly and quietly such sabotage could be carried out. Mere minutes sufficed to set this planned death in motion. Yet Emile's chilling calculation extended beyond the sabotage itself. When weather delayed jumps that afternoon, a potentially disruptive complication arose. Victoria could return the rental rig, prompting the issuing of a safe replacement and frustrating his plan. To prevent this, Emile persuaded Victoria to keep the sabotaged rig overnight in their locker at the airfield. This decision, innocuous on its face, ensured that the malicious trap he had set would remain sprung on the following day's jump. The juxtaposition of this heinous act against the backdrop of a family outing is stark and unsettling. The men's restroom, under the pretense of a child's needs, became the scene of cold, calculated murder. Emile exploited the innocence of his family setting to cloak his intent. Witnesses later marveled at the duplicity. No one suspected the father of two young children would weaponize a space meant for care and necessity. The judge at sentencing would highlight this aspect as a measure of the profound gravity and callousness of Emile's offense. What makes this act even more chilling is the exploitation of trust and routine. Victoria, unaware of the sabotage, accepted the pack for her jump, believing it safe. Her reliance on Emile's presence and the normalcy of the day laid bare the terrifying gap between appearance and reality in their marriage, an existence shadowed by control, manipulation, and deceit. This singular episode at Netheravon was a turning point, a pivot from domestic danger to aerial peril, from subtle poison to overt assault. It was the moment when Emile's murderous intentions transcended quiet sabotage and entered the realm of active, deadly violence. In the confined space of a bathroom cubicle, a husband who posed as protector and provider transformed into a perpetrator of a nearly unthinkable crime. As Victoria prepared for the jump the next day, oblivious to the life-threatening sabotage, the stage was set for a harrowing descent that would test the limits of survival and the depths of human betrayal. The sabotage at Netheravon Airfield was not merely an act of technical malfeasance. It was the cold heart of a plot that sought to end a life from within a family's fragile shell. This chapter of the story lays bare the sinister intersection of knowledge, opportunity, and a willful disregard for human life. It reveals how Emile weaponized the very thing meant to keep his wife safe, betraying trust and exploiting innocence with chilling efficiency. The deadly sabotage was a stark testament to how abuse and violence can lurk beneath the most ordinary facades, turning day-to-day rituals into instruments of calculated murder. With the sabotage symbolizing the darkest depths of Emile's plot, what followed was a terrifying freefall that would shock witnesses and experts alike, a freefall from which Victoria's survival would ultimately illuminate the depths of the betrayal she endured and the strength she would summon to overcome it. Wiltshire Police faced an intricate and daunting challenge when they began investigating the attempted murder of Victoria Cilliers. Without eyewitnesses and with a victim whose traumatic experience was compounded by years of psychological manipulation and coercive control, the detectives had to piece together a complex puzzle from subtle and often contradictory clues. The team, including Detective Inspector Paul Franklin, Detective Sergeant Mark Lewis, and Detective Constable Maddie Henner, brought a meticulous and methodical approach to the case, understanding that every detail could be vital in unraveling the truth concealed within layers of deceit. The first real breakthrough came with the comprehensive digital forensics analysis of Emile Cilliers' mobile phone. Seized early in the investigation, the device revealed a trove of data, over 32,000 text messages, that painted a revealing portrait of Emile's double life. These messages exposed an intricate web of lies, affairs, financial desperation, and a chilling premeditation of murder. The sheer volume and content of these communications offered insight not only into his external deceptions, but also into his internal state, a man deeply ensnared in debt, eager to escape the consequences of his choices through a sinister act. The texts provided clear evidence of ongoing infidelity, including a primary affair with a woman named Stephanie Goller, alongside continued contact with his ex-wife and multiple encounters with prostitutes. Critically, they also detailed his mounting financial troubles, owing over £22,000 to various lenders and colleagues, and his manipulation of his wife's bank accounts to cover his debts. Coupling this digital evidence with forensic science strengthened the investigators' case substantially. Forensic analysts tied Emile's DNA directly to the gas leak at the Cilliers family home, an early and calculated attempt to kill Victoria by loosening a gas isolation valve nut in the kitchen while their children slept. This was not merely circumstantial. The presence of his blood on the pipe and the distinctive tool marks matching Emile's locking pliers confirmed his personal involvement in a plot designed to cause an explosion that might be mistaken as an accident. These findings decisively disproved his claims of innocence about the gas leak, revealing a dangerous willingness to endanger not just Victoria but their children as well. Adding to the undeniable forensic trail was the expert analysis of the parachute sabotage, the centerpiece of Emile's lethal design. Utilizing his certified expertise as a parachute packer, Emile's methodical removal of two slinks from the reserve chute and the deliberate tangling of the main chute's lines ensured both parachutes would fail her during the jump. Expert demonstrations replicated the sabotage, showing how quickly and covertly these actions could be performed, even in the confined space of a toilet cubicle at the airfield, a location Emile manipulated as the perfect cover. Further, evidence that Emile had convinced Victoria to keep the sabotaged rig overnight underscored the calculated and cold-blooded nature of his plan. The forensic and technical evidence left little room for doubt, transforming what could have been dismissed as tragic accident into an incontrovertible case of attempted murder. While physical and digital evidence mounted, the investigation faced a profound psychological complexity embodied in Victoria herself. Her statements were often conflicted, reflecting both trauma and the deep effects of coercive control. The nature of her abusive relationship with Emile meant she frequently protected him in interviews and court testimony, her behavior misinterpreted by some as inconsistent or unreliable. The detectives understood that Victoria's protective stance was a manifestation of abuse. She was caught in the grip of manipulation that distorted her perceptions and responses. Rather than see these contradictions as weaknesses, the investigation team incorporated expert knowledge of coercive control to educate the jurors, emphasizing how such dynamics could influence a victim's testimony. This nuanced understanding was crucial in building a prosecution case that could stand independent of the victim's direct testimony, relying instead on overwhelming objective evidence and a deep contextual grasp of abusive patterns. The investigative team's holistic approach, marrying digital forensics, forensic science, expert testimony, and psychological insight, created a compelling evidentiary mosaic. It laid bare Emile's duplicitous nature, exposing the lies, affairs, financial woes, and cold calculation behind his plots. It revealed a man orchestrating his wife's murder with precision born from both intimate knowledge of her world and a ruthless desire to escape his circumstances. Importantly, the team's efforts to interpret Victoria's behavior through the lens of coercive control not only strengthened the legal narrative, but also brought to light the insidious nature of abuse, challenging jurors to rethink their assumptions about victimhood. This investigation set a significant precedent, demonstrating the necessity of evolving law enforcement tactics when confronting domestic violence crimes intertwined with complex psychological manipulation. It underscored the vital role of technology and forensic innovation in cases where direct proof is scarce and witnesses are silent or compromised. Above all, it highlighted the profound courage of survivors and the delicate path investigators must tread to bring perpetrators to justice in the face of tangled relationships and hidden darkness. As the evidence coalesced, the case against Emile was no longer just about circumstantial suspicions but a tightly woven narrative supported by science, human psychology, and digital footprints. This breakthrough marked the turning point in the pursuit of justice for Victoria Cilliers, setting the stage for a courtroom battle where truth, once obscured by deceit, would be laid bare. The next chapter would see the legal system grappling with this complex reality, bringing to the fore the profound challenges of prosecuting a case woven through with coercive control and calculated malevolence. The courtroom can often be a harrowing battleground where truth, perception, and emotion collide. In the case of Emile Cilliers, the path to justice was anything but straightforward. Emile's first trial, held in October 2017, ended in a hung jury, a reflection of the profound complexities and psychological undercurrents that permeated the case. Several factors converged to produce this indecisive outcome, not least the inconsistent testimony of Victoria Cilliers herself. Caught in the web of coercive control and emotional turmoil, Victoria's statements fluctuated, undermining the prosecution's case. Meanwhile, Emile mounted a vigorous defense, denying all allegations and propounding improbable alternate theories that planted seeds of doubt. His denials portrayed a man desperate to escape the consequences of his actions, weaving narratives that ranged from accusing Victoria of self-sabotage to blaming a mysterious third party for the sabotage. These alternative explanations, though implausible, capitalized on the jury's inherent uncertainty when confronted with conflicting accounts and a victim whose testimony was fractured by trauma. Yet, the prosecution remained undeterred. Learning from the first trial's challenges, authorities refined their approach for the retrial in 2018, shifting emphasis toward the overwhelming objective evidence that could stand apart from witness conflict. They leaned heavily on the scientific and technological breakthroughs uncovered during the investigation, the damning forensic analysis linking Emile's DNA and tools to the gas leak, the expert unraveling of the parachute tampering, which was meticulously demonstrated to the court, and the unassailable digital footprint embedded within Emile's 32,000 text messages that exposed the sinister motives of debt, deceit, and ego driving his murderous plot. Throughout the weeks of testimony, a clearer picture emerged for the jury, slicing through the layers of deception and doubt. Emile's facade of innocence crumbled under the weight of incontrovertible facts and expert accounts, revealing a man who coldly calculated the attempted murder of his wife with callous disregard for the lives endangered, including those of their 2 young children. Jurors, once grappling with uncertainty, found themselves certain beyond reasonable doubt that Emile was guilty. Their verdict delivered justice that the first trial had been unable to secure. Emile Cilliers was convicted on 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of reckless endangerment. The sentencing phase brought its own solemn reckoning. The judge's assessment was stark and uncompromising. Describing Emile as a man of exceptional callousness, devoid of the slightest remorse, the judge condemned the calculated cruelty of his acts. The crimes were not only premeditated assaults on Victoria's life, but reckless endangerment of their children's safety, an unforgivable betrayal of paternal duty and human decency. The legal pronouncement underscored the gravity of his offenses and the profound breach of trust they represented. This decisive conclusion marked more than just the end of a trial. It was a somber affirmation of the resilience required to confront and overcome such dark domestic terror. The courtroom battles revealed not only the bitter struggles of legal proof, but also the enduring scars left by coercive control. Victoria's inconsistent testimony was not a weakness of truth but a testament to the psychological chains her abuser had cast over her, complicating the path to justice but never extinguishing it. The unwavering pursuit by investigators, prosecutors, and the legal system ultimately pierced these veils of manipulation and fear. It was through their steadfast commitment to evidence and understanding that Emile Cilliers was held accountable, ensuring that his calculated crimes would not stand unchallenged. As this chapter closes, it reminds us that justice, while sometimes delayed and fraught with difficulty, can prevail even in the darkest of circumstances. The triumph of truth over deception sets the stage for the aftermath, the remarkable journey of survival and healing that Victoria would embark upon beyond the courtroom walls. Victoria Cilliers' survival was not simply about escaping the physical devastation of a 4,000-foot fall. It was an ongoing, grueling journey far beyond the initial fall. The story of her survival stretches deep into the psychological aftermath that followed the trials and verdicts, exposing the profound scars left by betrayal and control, and ultimately, the remarkable strength it took to reclaim her life and identity. In the immediate months and years after the harrowing jump, Victoria grappled with a paradox of emotions. The physical trauma of broken bones and shattered pelvis was only the beginning. The true battle unfolded within her mind. She wrestled with the enormity of what had been done to her, not just the attempted murder, but the profound betrayal by the man she once trusted completely, her husband Emile. The shock of discovering that the person who was supposed to protect her had meticulously planned her death created an emotional minefield. She found herself caught in a web of disbelief, confusion, and bitterness. Yet, even after Emile's conviction, Victoria's path was far from clear. Despite the court's decisive judgment against him, the psychological ties forged by years of coercive control and manipulation did not simply vanish. For some time after the trial, Victoria continued to visit Emile in prison. These visits were not simple acts of reconciliation or forgiveness. They were complex and painful encounters where Emile persisted in his manipulations, attempting to rewrite their story and maintain a semblance of control over her. He painted illusions of a future where, despite everything, they could still be a family, effectively trying to draw her back into the toxic dynamic that had nearly ended her life. This phase was perhaps the most challenging of all, a prolonged internal struggle where Victoria battled not only her memories but the enduring psychological grip of a man adept at control. It was a testament to the deep wound inflicted by emotional abuse that even after surviving a near-death experience and seeing justice served, Victoria still wrestled with disentangling herself from Emile's influence. The breakthrough toward clarity and healing came through an unexpected but powerful medium, writing. Victoria undertook the task of narrating her story in her memoir, I Survived. Writing became a vehicle for truth and self-discovery. It allowed her to trace back through her years with Emile and illuminate the patterns of coercion, deception, and abuse that had remained hidden beneath the surface for so long. With each chapter, she confronted the painful realities, leaving no detail unexamined. She described the slow, emotionally corrosive process of manipulation, the gaslighting, the lies, the betrayals, and in doing so, she reclaimed her narrative from the silence and confusion that had clouded her for so many years. Completing the memoir marked a turning point. Victoria found not only an intellectual understanding of what had happened but also the emotional strength needed to sever the final ties with Emile. She communicated to him unequivocally that she wanted a divorce and cut all remaining contact. The sense of relief she described was profound, like a massive weight lifted from her shoulders. For the first time, she genuinely felt free from the psychological chains that had bound her during and even after the crime and trial. Embracing this newfound freedom, Victoria began to reconstruct her life piece by piece. Central to her healing was rebuilding her family, creating a safe and nurturing environment for her children, a foundation vastly different from the one that had been undermined by fear and betrayal. She returned to her professional role as a physiotherapist within the Ministry of Defense, where her skills and dedication offered a form of grounding and purpose amid the turbulence. Perhaps most poignant of all was Victoria's return to skydiving, the very activity that had nearly cost her life but had long been a source of joy and personal passion. She met a new partner who shared her love of the sport and, importantly, understood her past. This connection brought comfort and a renewed sense of belonging. No longer needing to explain her trauma incessantly, Victoria found in this relationship shared experiences and mutual understanding, softening the hard edges of her past. Her ultimate act of reclaiming her life and rewriting the narrative of what skydiving meant to her came in the form of a final tandem jump. Though faced with natural fear, she chose to ascend once more into the skies, not as a victim, but as a victor. When she left the aircraft, she described the overwhelming feelings as pure joy, freedom, and complete escapism. This jump was not simply a tribute to survival but a symbolic reclaiming of autonomy and hope, an unmistakable declaration that the past would no longer dictate her future. Victoria Cilliers' story shines as a beacon of resilience, an extraordinary journey from the depths of attempted murder and psychological control to the heights of renewed life and possibility. It is a vivid reminder that survival extends beyond the physical. It requires untangling the mind from deception, courageously facing the truth, and ultimately reclaiming one's right to hope, joy, and freedom. Her journey beyond the fall is not just about endurance, but about redemption, illustrating the indomitable spirit of a survivor who chose life not just once, but again and again. As we reflect on her path, we see a testament not only to what it means to survive, but to what it means to live fully once more. The story of Emile Cilliers and Victoria is more than a tale of attempted murder. It is a profound case study in the darker dimensions of intimate partner violence, where coercion and manipulation intertwine with a cold-blooded murder plot. This case challenges many assumptions about abuse, particularly the misconception that violence must always be overt to be real. Emile's carefully constructed image as a disciplined soldier and devoted husband masked an insidious and calculated malevolence, revealing just how dangerous appearances can be. At the heart of this investigation was a remarkable convergence of modern forensic science, digital forensics, and an evolving understanding of coercive control, a pattern of psychological abuse that can leave victims trapped and confused, often obscuring the truth behind their actions and testimonies. The meticulous work of law enforcement in this investigation underscores the critical need for legal frameworks and police training to continuously evolve, particularly to address the subtle, often invisible nature of psychological abuse within domestic settings. Victoria's initially inconsistent statements and her complicated feelings toward her abuser illustrate the nuanced challenges prosecutors face when victims are still under the sway of manipulation, further complicating the path to justice. The forensic breakthroughs were key. Emile's DNA linked him directly to the earlier gas leak attempt in their home, a silent and reckless first move in his quest to kill Victoria. Digital evidence, 32,000 text messages, laid bare his financial desperation, multiple affairs, and a meticulously plotted timeline for the murder. Then there was the parachute sabotage itself, a calamitous attack on the very equipment that should have kept Victoria safe during her jump. Here, Emile's technical expertise as a certified parachute packer played a grim role, enabling him to bypass safety protocols and attempt an act of unfathomable betrayal. But the weight of this case does not rest solely on the darkness of Emile's actions. It is equally about the extraordinary resilience embodied by Victoria. The sheer fact that she survived a 4,000-foot freefall, with both her main and reserve parachutes deliberately sabotaged, defies belief. Yet survival was just the beginning of her journey. The emotional and psychological toll of surviving an abusive, manipulative partner who tried to end her life is often invisible but no less severe. Victoria's story, including her struggle to process the betrayal, continued contact with Emile post-arrest, and eventual empowerment through writing her memoir, paints a vivid picture of the complex reality of victimhood and survival. Her path from confusion and fear to clarity and strength stands as a testament to the indomitable human spirit. The Emile Cilliers case thus leaves behind an enduring message. It reminds us to remain vigilant against violence that wears a mask of normalcy, to broaden our awareness of abuse beyond the physical, and to support survivors not only in escaping danger, but in reclaiming their lives fully. It is a clarion call for justice, one that acknowledges the complexity of victimhood and the multifaceted nature of survival. Ultimately, the shadow this case casts is pierced by the light of Victoria's survival and renewal, highlighting that while evil can lurk unseen, the human spirit has the capacity to endure, to resist, and to triumph.